Maya Johnson just wanted one shot. Not sympathy, not permission. Just a chance to prove she belonged. The colonel laughed in her face, then dared her to try. What he didn't know was that Maya had trained in the shadows, guided by silence and grief. One pull of the trigger shattered more than glass. It exposed a legacy built on exclusion. But when the truth starts hitting targets louder than bullets, even power begins to tremble. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The sun leaned heavy on the shoulders of the Georgia countryside, bleeding orange into the rusted roofs and splintered wood of the Southside Rifle Club. Dust kicked up from the boots of proud men and prim wives as they lined the field, folding chairs spread in rows like obedient soldiers awaiting spectacle. Flags hung limp in the heat, and the smell of tobacco clung to the air. There were whispers of a challenge, one that had stirred confusion, offense and uneasy anticipation. Colonel Everett Whitman, silver-mustached and stomach-first, stood in the center, polishing the antique revolver he had won back in '42. His reputation wasn't just built on medals. It thrived on intimidation, and today his glare carved silence into the crowd. He cleared his throat, watching the lineup of club members in their cream-colored uniforms, and pressed pride. That's when she stepped forward. 17-year-old Maya Johnson, moved with a kind of posture that didn't belong to her place in the South. Her spine upright, her chin steady, her skin the deep brown of heritage, the kind that invited mockery in spaces like these. She wore no club uniform, only a plain white blouse tucked into dark jeans, and eyes that didn't blink in the face of hostility. The laughter began before she even spoke, a chuckle from a man in the second row. A spit-laced cackle from a boy no older than Maya, except twice as smug. Then the colonel tilted his head, narrowed his eyes, and asked in a syrupy drawl, "Now what is this?" "I'd like a shot," Maya said evenly, nodding toward the revolver in his hand. The colonel paused, stunned, not at her words, but at the audacity they carried. Then came the explosion of laughter, guttural and cruel. Even the women, clutching parasols like proper ladies, smiled behind gloved fingers. Whitman turned to the crowd and raised the revolver like a comedian, raising a prop. "She'd like a shot, fellas." His voice boomed across the field, thick with disdain. "Lord, this heat must be messin' with my ears. You're telling me you want to handle this weapon? In this club?" Maya didn't flinch. Her voice didn't shake. "Yes, sir. Darlin', you do realize this is a rifle club for..." He caught himself letting the silence complete the sentence. A few chuckles escaped the crowd. This ain't no place for charity stunts. It wasn't the first time Maya had heard that tone. It dripped from teachers' mouths when she raised her hand too often. It slithered from store owners' eyes when she walked in without makeup. But something inside her that morning had burned too long, too fiercely to ignore. That fire now glowed behind her eyes. "Sir," she said again, "may I shoot your revolver?" The colonel's smirk dropped for half a second. Then, with a dramatic sigh, he tossed the revolver onto the presentation table beside him. "Fine. Let her have her show," he muttered. "Let's see if she can even lift it." Maya walked forward, every step piercing the weight of Southern history. Behind her, whispers ricocheted like bullets.
"Ain't she embarrassed?"
"Where's her daddy now? She won't even get it cocked." She reached the table and picked up the revolver. It was heavier than she expected, but not foreign. Her fingers found the grip instinctively. Years of secret training in her family's barn had taught her not just how to shoot, but how to listen, to hear the air shift, to sense a heartbeat in the trigger. The colonel watched with narrowed eyes as she stepped into position. "She'll drop it," someone muttered behind him. She didn't. Instead, she held it up, breathed deeply, and took aim at the row of bottles lined across the wooden fence. Each bottle, a different size. Each one painted in the club's colors, beige and red. The furthest bottle, smaller than a teacup, tilted slightly in the wind. She steadied her hand. The field fell unnaturally quiet. Maya didn't see the crowd. She didn't feel the sun. She only remembered the whisper of her father's voice, the way he'd guided her wrist, the nights she practiced with BB guns until her arm trembled from exhaustion. "You don't shoot for them," he once told her. "You shoot for what they said you could never be." Her index finger squeezed. The crack of the revolver was clean. One sharp burst, and the bottle at the end exploded into fragments so small even the dust didn't settle the same way. There was no applause. There was only silence. And the colonel, still as stone, mouth slightly parted, staring at the now empty place where the final bottle had stood. Maya lowered the gun, The silence dragged. Then someone whispered. She hit the furthest one. Another voice. First try. And another she didn't even blink. The colonel's lips moved, but no words came out. And just as Maya began to step away from the line, another sound shattered the hush. The loud click of a second revolver being cocked. From the side gate, a man in a sheriff's uniform stepped in, flanked by 2 deputies. His eyes locked onto Maya. That shot, he said, just violated club protocol. The crowd turned. Maya's breath caught. The sheriff's eyes didn't waver. You're coming with us. Maya just proved them all wrong, but now faces an entirely different threat. One that could erase everything she just accomplished. The sheriff's words rang through Maya's skull as she stood frozen on the shooting line. Her fingers still tingled from the revolver's trigger. The echo of the shot felt louder than any accusation. But now all eyes were no longer on her aim. They were on her skin, her defiance, her very presence. The sheriff's voice, sharp and smug, snapped the crowd's attention to a new target. You're coming with us, he repeated. Louder this time, as if daring the silence to disagree. But Maya didn't move. She didn't speak. Because her mind wasn't there anymore. It was back in the barn. Back in the dust and wood. In the quiet cradle of Georgia trees where this entire journey had begun. Hidden, uncelebrated, and desperate. The barn behind the Johnson home leaned slightly to one side, as if it too was tired from holding secrets for so many years. Ivy had wrapped itself around the wood like arms trying to pull it down, but the structure stood anyway, worn, cracked, and patient. Inside, the scent of oil and pine straw lingered, along with decades of rusted tools and forgotten plans. This was Maya's cathedral. This was where she became someone other than the girl the world told her to be. She would slip out early, before school, before the town could remind her who she was. She'd practice until her arms ached, fingers raw from handling the cheap BB rifle her father had bought secondhand before the cancer stole his breath. The floor of the barn was lined with bottle caps, rusted cans, even cut-out newspaper clippings pinned like targets to hay bales. Each shot she took wasn't just training, it was declaration, a protest in powder. You think they'll ever let you compete? Her cousin Janelle had asked. One summer afternoon, watching from the doorway with arms crossed and skepticism heavy in her voice. They won't need to let me, Maya had answered, lining up another shot. I'm going to beat them where they can't stop it. She didn't always believe herself, but every shot made the belief a little louder. The dreams had started with her father, David Johnson, a veteran, like the colonel, but buried in a segregated cemetery on the edge of town, next to the discarded, the forgotten. He'd loved the art of precision, the calm of stillness before a shot. In their final conversations, his voice had grown raspy, but one phrase stayed sharp. You gotta be better than them, baby. Not louder, not angrier, better. So good they choke on it. She remembered sitting next to his bed, holding his frail hand as he whispered tales of shooting matches he'd never been invited to join. They talked of building a legacy, of rewriting their place in the county, one shot at a time. But he never got to see her hold a real gun. After his death, the barn became a graveyard of unfinished promises, until Maya found her purpose in the dust. The rejection came sharp, cruel, and public. She'd applied 3 times to the South Side Rifle Club, each time using her initials to mask her race. Each time, she received the same reply. We appreciate your interest, but our membership is currently full. But the club's Facebook page showed new members announced weekly. Always smiling, always white. One day, while walking past the hardware store, she heard 2 club members joking. She didn't need to lean in. Their laughter was sharp, and didn't care who heard it. Some colored girl from the edge of town trying to join. Can you believe that? I bet she wants her own water fountain on the range too. The other man laughed so hard he dropped his soda. They didn't know she was standing just behind the tool rack, frozen, lips trembling. That night she didn't cry. She loaded every can she could find, stacked them in a pyramid, and didn't stop shooting until her shoulder bruised and her shirt stuck to her with sweat. I'd shoot them all, she whispered into the dark. Every last one. Maya had found ways to get better. She borrowed old magazines from the school library, issues of American Marksman and Precision Weekly that smelled of mildew and ridicule. She studied breath control, finger placement, and sight alignment. She turned her lunch breaks into meditation sessions, training her body to listen to silence. And sometimes, on the rare occasion her mother wasn't working overtime, she'd find her watching from the barn door. Her mother's eyes always looked tired, weighed down by grief, and bills and the quiet fear only black mothers know. "You think this'll change anything?" she'd ask gently. Maya never answered directly. She didn't have to. Her mother would watch her hit every target and quietly go back inside. Sometimes the silence said more than permission. On a Wednesday morning, with dew still glistening on the barn floor, Maya set up her most difficult challenge yet. 3 tiny eggshells balanced on fence posts, set at different distances, each requiring a shift in focus, posture, and speed. It was the test she'd saved for when she truly believed she was ready. Her hands were steady, her feet grounded, her breath full of the rhythm of revenge and resolve. She fired once, first egg exploded into mist. Second shot, clean break. She readjusted, narrowed her focus, exhaled slowly, and just as she squeezed the third trigger, a scream cut through the woods. No, not a scream, sirens. Piercing. Close. Maya froze. The shot misfired, barely grazing the shell. She dropped to the barn floor instinctively, heart racing. Through the slats in the barn walls, she saw red and blue lights flickering through the trees. A voice shouted her name. Not just shouted, commanded. "Ma'am, come out now." She stood slowly, the BB gun still in hand. 2 deputies emerged from the path behind the property, guns drawn, not toward the barn, but toward her. One of them, Officer Blake, recognized her. "Put it down, Maya," he said, quieter, but still sharp. She raised her hands, confused, heart pounding. "I was just training, in my barn." "Got a call," he said. "Anonymous tip. Something about a young black girl stockpiling firearms. You fit the description." Maya looked at her BB gun, at the eggshells, at the world that had somehow found her even here. In her sanctuary. Even in the place she had built to be invisible. Just as Maya masters her craft, the outside world invades her secret, forcing her to face a public that was never supposed to see her practice, let alone fear it. And this time the threat wears a badge. The sirens eventually faded, but the damage had been done. Even though the deputies left without pressing charges, after realizing Maya's so-called arsenal was a BB gun and a few paper targets, their visit sent a silent message louder than gunfire. "We're watching you." By sunset, the news had already begun to twist. The whispers traveled like wildfire through dry Georgia grass. First it was the Johnson girls been training with military weapons. Then it became she pulled a gun on officers in the woods. In a town like Fairwood, rumors didn't need truth. They only needed an audience, and racism always guaranteed a crowd. Within days, talk of Maya Johnson spread far beyond her neighborhood. The Southside Rifle Club, once a sanctuary for white veterans and wealthy hobbyists, buzzed with tension. It started in the locker rooms and bar lounges, muttered between swigs of sweet tea and bourbon. "Colonel," one member whispered, leaning toward Whitman as they watched the sunset over the range. "You heard what she did? They say she shot the smallest target in the county clean through, didn't even flinch." Colonel Whitman didn't respond immediately. He stared down at his whiskey glass, the ice melting into amber. "She's a child," he finally muttered. "Child or not," the man continued, "she's getting talked about more than you." That stung. The colonel turned sharply. "You think I care about whispers? I've bled for this country. I've taught half the men here how to shoot. She wants to play soldier? Let her. She'll learn quick enough this ain't a playground." But that night, he stayed long after the others had gone. Alone on the range, he lined up 6 cans and fired slowly. He missed the last one. The whispers didn't stop. They grew. First came the Facebook posts. Blurry screenshots of Maya at the town fair, cropped just right to seem intimidating. Then came the talk radio segment, "The Girl Who Wants to Be a Man," hosted by a white veteran who hadn't picked up a gun in 15. By the end of the week, a local paper ran a small column. "Black Teens' Marksmanship Sparks Debate on Tradition, Inclusion." It was supposed to be a warning. Instead, it lit a fuse. Maya heard about the article from the school janitor, Mr. Howell, who quietly slipped it into her locker with a note. "You're more than a story. Keep going." But Maya didn't feel heroic. She felt watched, exposed. In the hallway, students whispered behind lockers. Some mocked, some smirked. Others just stared, unsure whether to be impressed or disgusted. At lunch, she sat alone, not because no one wanted to sit with her, but because she didn't want to answer any more questions that weren't questions. "Did you really point a gun at the cops? Are you trying to be in the military or something? Why do you care so much about their club?" Maya didn't care about the club. She cared about what it meant to be barred from it. She cared about the way tradition was used, like a weapon. She cared that no one expected her to be excellent, just quiet. That weekend, she biked to the edge of town where the highway met an old billboard advertising rifle gear. She stopped, stared at it, pictured herself on it one day, not for fame, but because no one like her ever had been. At the Southside Club, tension brewed louder. Colonel Whitman, bruised by pride, ego and the idea of being outshot by a teenage girl, decided on something drastic. He called a meeting. Only the most senior members were invited. Inside the old dining hall, beneath portraits of Confederate generals and past club champions, he cleared his throat and laid down a proposal. "I want to offer a challenge," he said, eyes scanning the room. "An open duel. Public. Anyone can attend. One-on-one. If she accepts and wins, we let her shoot in the annual state showcase. If she loses, she never steps foot on this property again." There was a silence. Then one man laughed, another clapped. They loved it, not because it was fair, but because it was final. "And what if she doesn't accept?" someone asked. Whitman leaned forward. "Then we prove she never really belonged." The next day the town buzzed with excitement. Betting circles formed behind diners and church walls. Odds were stacked against Maya, 7. Some bet for fun, some out of spite, and some, silently, bet on her because they were tired of pretending excellence only came in white skin. Maya found out the way most things reached her. Secondhand. She was in the backyard feeding the chickens when her younger brother, Elias, burst through the fence. "You seen this?" he said, waving a slip of paper. She took it. It was a printed flyer, elegant, embossed with gold trim, folded like a wedding invitation. Her name was right at the top. "You are hereby invited to a private exhibition match at the Southside Rifle Club. Your acceptance is expected by sunrise." At the bottom, in Whitman's careful handwriting, "One shot can change everything." She read it 3 times. Then she walked into the house, flyer in hand, heart pounding. Her mother stood at the sink, staring out the window. She didn't turn. "I know," she said. Maya waited. "What do I do?" she finally asked. Her mother dried her hands slowly, then faced her. "You go," she said. "And you don't shoot for them. You shoot for your daddy. For yourself." That night Maya slept with the invitation tucked beneath her pillow like a blade. She dreamed of standing alone in front of hundreds. Of missing. Of silence. Of laughter. She woke before her alarm, breath tight, the morning still cloaked in blue. She stepped onto the porch and found a single black car waiting at the curb. Engine humming, windows dark. Maya hasn't even accepted the challenge yet, but someone's already come to collect her. And in the back seat of that car sits someone she never expected to see again. The engine of the black car purred like it had a secret to tell. Its windows were tinted dark as midnight, and its chrome edges gleamed with a kind of menace. Maya stood barefoot on the porch, the dawn chill biting at her ankles, the engraved invitation trembling in her hand. She'd barely had time to process it, let alone reply, but someone had already come. She stepped forward cautiously. The driver didn't exit. The passenger window lowered just enough to reveal a familiar silhouette. It was Mr. Klein, the school's history teacher, retired Army, respected by the town. But Maya had never seen him outside school, and certainly not dressed in a dark blazer with the Southside Rifle Club pin gleaming from his lapel. "I'm here as a courtesy," he said calmly, his voice too smooth. "Colonel Whitman thought you might need a ride. You've got until noon to accept." Maya narrowed her eyes. "I haven't agreed to anything." He smiled faintly, almost like he pitied her. "That's the thing about invitations like these. Not accepting sends its own message." Then the window rolled up slowly, leaving Maya standing in her own breath. Later that morning, she sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor. The official challenge letter unfolded in front of her. The Southside Rifle Club's gold insignia was pressed into the wax seal, 2 crossed rifles over a pine wreath, designed like something out of a Civil War museum. The letter itself was brief, cold. "Maya Johnson, you are formally invited to participate in a one-on-one exhibition shooting match at the Southside Rifle Club. Your attendance will be seen as a request for recognition and consideration for club invitation. If declined, no further invitations will be extended. Prove you belong if you dare." There were no kind words, no signs of respect, just a threat dressed as a challenge. She read it 3 times before she felt the sting. "Prove you belong." As if her existence, her skill, Her sweat-soaked hours of practice meant nothing without their permission. As if talent needed their validation to be real. As if everything her father taught her could be dismissed by a wax seal and a smirk. She wanted to throw it in the fire. But then came the other voice, quieter but sharper. What if you're afraid? Downstairs, the floor creaked under quiet feet. Her mother stood at the stove, stirring slowly, though she hadn't eaten breakfast in weeks. Maya sat at the kitchen table and placed the letter between them. Her mother didn't look down. She already knew. Her hand trembled slightly as she turned off the stove. They want to humiliate you, she said quietly. Maya nodded. I know. They want you to be the example. The no they can point to for the next girl who tries. I know that too. Her mother finally turned. Eyes wet, voice barely more than breath. Then why are you even thinking about it? And there it was. The question Maya had avoided asking herself. She stared at the letter again, then at her mother's face. Tired, etched with years of working double shifts, of shrinking herself to survive in a world that mistook silence for obedience. Because if I don't, Maya said, then the only story they'll tell is the one they wrote, and I'm done living in someone else's story. An hour later, her older brother Marcus burst into the room, holding the letter in his hand. He'd just gotten off his overnight shift at the steel yard, face still streaked with ash, voice hot with rage. They can't do this to you. They want you to walk into their house, play by their rules, and lose on their terms. It's not about them anymore, Maya said, voice firm. It's about me. He slammed the letter down on the table. And what if you win? You think they're gonna clap for you? Hand you a trophy and say, well done? They're gonna find a way to tear it down anyway. Your win won't change their hate. I'm not trying to change their hate, Maya said. I'm trying to change the ending. Marcus stared at her, jaw tight. His anger wasn't aimed at her. It was fear. The kind black men carry like armor passed down from generation to generation. He loved her. That's what made him so afraid. Later that evening, Maya sat at her desk, pen in hand. She'd rewritten her response 10 times. Every draft felt either too weak or too angry. In the end, she settled on truth. To the members of the Southside Rifle Club, I accept your invitation. I will be there at the date and time specified. I don't shoot to prove I belong. I shoot because I already do. Maya Johnson. She folded the letter neatly, sealed it with the plain envelope she'd pulled from her father's old desk, and left it in the mailbox before the last pickup. At the club, Colonel Whitman sat in his office, the scent of gunpowder and varnish in the air. A junior member placed Maya's envelope on his desk. He opened it with the same blade he used to slice cigars. As he read, a slow grin curved across his face. Excellent, he whispered to himself. Then he turned to the file cabinet behind him, pulled out a dusty binder labeled Event Protocol, and flipped to a section labeled Disqualifications. He placed a small red tab on the corner. Just in case, he said, as if planning for rain. That night, Maya lay in bed staring at the ceiling. There was no peace, no rush of pride, just a weight, a heavy understanding that the path she chose no longer belonged to her alone. It belonged to every girl who'd ever been told she wasn't allowed to dream too loudly. The next morning, Maya wakes to find a newspaper slipped under her door, with her face on the front page, captioned with one word, outsider, and someone's drawn a red target right over her forehead. The red target drawn over her face on the front page didn't fade with the morning light. It haunted her like a mark she couldn't scrub off. The newspaper lay on her desk, creased and torn from how many times she'd folded and unfolded it. Her picture, cropped harshly from a school ID photo, looked nothing like her. They'd chosen the worst image on purpose. No smile, bad lighting, dark shadows across her cheeks. Outsider. The word hung there, bold as blood. Maya didn't speak much that morning. Her mother didn't either. But when she left the house with her duffel bag slung over her shoulder and her shooting gloves tucked into her waistband, her mother said softly, "Be careful, baby. Not, don't go. Not stay home. Just that." And somehow, that made it worse. The barn became a battleground of silence and sweat. Maya trained like time was hunting her. Her days stretched from dawn to dusk. Hands blistered from loading and reloading. Muscles sore from hours of posture drills. Her legs stiff from sprinting short distances before firing. Testing her composure under physical strain. Every target she shot now had his face on it. Colonel Whitman. His smirk. His disbelief. His smug invitation wrapped in insult. Her breathing drills became meditations against humiliation. Her focus drills were shields against fear. She whispered mantras under her breath as she fired. Not for them. Bang. Not to belong. Bang. To be better. Bang. Her first ally arrived quietly, uninvited. Caleb, the groundskeeper at the school. He was nearly 60, sun-beaten, and mostly invisible to the staff, but he'd been watching her train from a distance since the rumors started. One evening, after Maya shattered 7 straight bottle caps from 30 yards, he stepped out from behind a tree with his hat in his hands. You breathe like a sniper, he said. She turned sharply, lowering her rifle. I ain't here to stop you, he added. Just figured you might like some help from someone who's seen what it looks like when the shots really matter. Caleb had been a Marine once. Quiet about it. No medals, no stories, but his posture didn't lie. Over the next few days, he taught Maya how to shoot in wind, how to listen for environmental shifts, how to count in her head when the body's adrenaline clock was all wrong. He never asked why she was doing this. He didn't need to. He just said, when the target is tradition, you don't aim to wound. Her second ally came unexpectedly, Mr. Arthur Lane, retired marksman and former club champion, now mostly forgotten. He lived in a rust-colored trailer 2 towns over, hidden behind an overgrown orchard. Maya found him by accident, through a dusty forum for competitive shooters that hadn't been updated since 2012. When she emailed him, she didn't expect a reply. He showed up 2 days later. He had thinning white hair, a limp, and a voice like gravel soaked in bourbon. Is this the one? He asked Caleb, who nodded without words. For 3 hours that afternoon, Lane watched, didn't speak, just leaned on his cane and stared as Maya shot. Then he said, you shoot like someone they don't want to exist. Maya didn't know what to say. Good, he added. That's the kind of shooting they never forget. But not everyone who watched her was a friend. Word had gotten out. Boys from the white part of town started driving past the property, yelling from car windows. One morning, Maya found a dead squirrel nailed to the barn door, with a note, next time it's you. The sheriff never returned her mother's calls. Marcus started walking the perimeter with a bat every night. And still she trained. The guilt came slowly. Then all at once, she'd been hiding the truth from her mother. About the caliber of the rifles Lane lent her. About how close some of the drive-bys had come. About the threats. One night, while cleaning the barrel of the new .22 Lane gave her, she looked up to see her mother standing in the doorway. Where'd you get that? Her voice was soft but sharp. Maya froze. I asked you a question. Maya looked down. A friend. He used to compete. That ain't no toy, Maya. I know. Her mother stepped inside, closed the barn door behind her. Her hands shook as she touched the edge of the rifle. I wanted to protect you from this world, and here you are walking right into it. I'm not walking in, Maya said. I'm pushing through it. Her mother didn't answer. She just pulled Maya close, laid her forehead against hers, and whispered, just come back home after. The day before the competition, the air felt heavier. Maya spent hours fine-tuning everything. Her sightline, her posture, her rhythm. She practiced with Lane's stopwatch, timing her reactions, her reloads, her composure. Caleb swept the barn floor like it was sacred ground. I've seen men lose before they ever shot, he told her. Don't be one of them. She nodded, tying her braid tighter, the back of her neck slick with sweat. Tomorrow, she whispered. Tomorrow they see. That evening, Marcus helped her carry fresh targets out to the field behind the barn. The sun had dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of copper and violet. They planted 6 targets in a line, each farther than the last. Then Maya walked back to the barn to grab her gloves. She was gone no more than 4 minutes. When she returned, Marcus stood staring at the targets, silent. Each one had been slashed, clean through, like someone had taken a knife and gutted them. Spray painted across the back wall of the barn, in dripping red letters, were the words, "Go back to your side." Maya stood frozen. Not because of the message, but because of what was missing. Her rifle, gone. On the eve of the biggest moment of her life, Maya discovers her equipment is stolen, her field is vandalized, and her enemies are no longer hiding behind whispers. They're acting, and she has just hours to figure out what to do. The wind was sharp when Maya opened her eyes. Still dark. The kind of darkness just before dawn, when everything feels like it's holding its breath. She sat up in bed, heart still racing from the dream she couldn't remember. Something had chased her through fog. Something she couldn't see but felt, heavy, Familiar. A knock on the window snapped her fully awake. Marcus, face pale, hands trembling. Maya Barn. Now. She ran barefoot across the dewy grass, sleep still clinging to her eyes, fear anchoring her ribs. The moment she pushed the barn door open, her breath caught. Everything was wrecked. Paper targets, shredded. Her practice logs, soaked in water, and stomped. Her duffel bag, unzipped, tossed, and empty. The little trophy her father once gave her for best backyard shot lay cracked on the floor. And worst of all, her bullets. Gone. Every single round. Lane's match-grade .22 rounds. The custom shells Caleb had gifted her. The emergency stash she kept taped under the tool bench. All of it. Gone. Her rifle had been recovered last night, tossed in a ditch 3 blocks away by kids too stupid to hide their tracks. But now it was useless without ammunition. She dropped to her knees, hands in her hair, breath shallow. It was happening. They weren't just threatening her anymore. They were playing God, and the clock was ticking. Marcus stood by the door, fists clenched, face dark with helpless rage. I stayed up all night, he muttered. I swear I didn't even blink, but they knew when to come, knew where everything was. Maya didn't respond. She was already thinking. Fat. Call Lane, she whispered. It's barely 5. Call him. Marcus nodded and stepped out to find cell reception. Maya stared at the mess again. All that training, all those hours, the sweat, the silence, the nights she pressed her cheek to a rifle butt and imagined her father watching from heaven. It had all led to this morning, and they thought they could erase it overnight. Lane didn't answer on the first try, or the second. Finally, on the third, his voice came through, rough and groggy. What's wrong? They took my ammo. Pause. You have your rifle? Yeah. Found it in the ditch yesterday. Ammo? None. Lane exhaled through the phone. They're trying to make you back out. I'm not backing out. Another pause. Then do you have the loader I gave you? Yes. Good. Listen, look inside. I left you something. Maya ripped open the tool loader and peeled away the foam. There, tucked beneath the wrench heads, was a strip of 4 rounds, 22 hollow points, handcrafted by Lane. Emergency rounds. She felt her lungs expand again. 4 bullets. 4 chances. Not enough for a full match, but enough to start, enough to face them. Caleb arrived just before sunrise. He said nothing at first, just looked at the barn, the damage, then at Maya. You still going? She nodded. His expression didn't change. He stepped inside, picked up one of the ripped targets, and handed it to her. You got a marker? She did. He held the paper flat against the barn wall. Then draw your own damn targets. They improvised. Caleb measured distances with a worn measuring tape. Marcus helped stack hay bales. Maya drew circles. Rough, but close enough on printer paper. They taped them to plywood, reinforced the backs with cardboard. No perfect visuals. No laser alignment. But she didn't need perfect anymore. She needed possible, and fire. As the sun broke the horizon, Maya stood with her rifle in hand, sweat already prickling down her spine, her hands stained with black marker and dirt. Marcus packed the trunk of the car. Caleb adjusted the makeshift holster they'd built from rope and canvas. Maya stared out at the open road. No birds, no breeze, just silence, the kind that comes before war. By 7:00 a.m., the Southside Rifle Club was buzzing. Men in suits carried coffee cups and confidence. Wives in pastel dresses whispered behind fans. Reporters circled like vultures. The shooting range looked pristine, polished, the lawn mowed to perfection. Every rifle glinted under the rising sun. And in the center, Colonel Whitman, smiling, like a man who had already written the ending. He wore his full dress uniform, not out of patriotism, but performance. The medals, the creases, the shined boots. It was all theater. When Maya arrived, every head turned. No one spoke. No one needed to. Her presence alone was disruption. She walked slowly, deliberately. Her steps left small marks on the gravel, each one heavier than the last. She passed the line of shooters, past the rows of chairs, past the white line marked visitors, and stopped in front of Whitman. They locked eyes. She didn't flinch. He leaned in, voice low, just loud enough for her to hear. You'll fail. His words didn't land like before. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because she knew something he didn't. He thought she came here with nothing. But he didn't know that even nothing could be sharpened into a weapon. She stepped onto the range. The air thinned. Someone coughed in the back. Reporters leaned forward. The announcer cleared his throat. Welcome to the Southside Invitational Challenge match. Shooter 1, Colonel Everett Whitman. Shooter 2, Miss Maya Johnson. Maya raised her rifle, lined her sights, and just before the buzzer rang, she glanced at the colonel, who had suddenly gone pale. She followed his gaze, and saw Lane, in the crowd, front row, and seated next to him, a state inspector, clipboard in hand, badge glinting. Maya came expecting sabotage, but now realizes someone has come to witness everything. And if she performs well, this match might become more than local history. It could ignite something far bigger. The silence was unnerving. Not the absence of sound, but the suppression of it. No applause. No chatter. Just stiff postures and frozen expressions, as if the crowd had been instructed to observe, not react. Maya stood at the firing line, eyes fixed on the target ahead, 100 yards out. 5 bullseyes in a staggered arrangement. Standard layout, no frills. But what wasn't standard was everything else. Her skin, her name, her presence. She could feel the stare's needles along her spine, heavy as chains. To her left, Colonel Whitman cracked his knuckles slowly, the click of bone like a taunt. His rifle gleamed under the sun, freshly oiled and pristine. Maya's gun? Clean but worn. No scope, no electronic aid, just balance, grit, and faith. The announcer's voice rang out. Shooters, ready. She breathed in, held it. The crowd blurred. The whispers faded. Only the bullseyes existed now. Bang! Her first shot cracked like truth. Clean, sharp, direct hit to the inner ring. A low murmur rippled, but quickly died down. She exhaled slowly, feeling her pulse settle, not rise. Next round. Bang! Another hit. Slight drift to the right, barely, within tolerance. To her left, she heard the colonel's shot follow hers, like punctuation. Loud. Commanding. The judge marked them both with tight nods. Maya noticed the twitch in his brow when logging her score. Third round. This time she adjusted her stance. Right foot slightly forward, left elbow locked. She thought of her father's voice. Trust your instincts. Sight is about memory, not muscle. She fired. Bang. Bullseye. No error. No overcompensation. The shot clipped the center like a whisper slicing glass. Someone in the crowd gasped. A small one. Quickly silenced. She could feel eyes widen. Not in admiration, but disbelief. Behind her, a voice hissed just loud enough to reach her. Lucky monkey. She didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. Her breath stayed steady.
Fourth round.
She fought her nerves, not with suppression, but by acknowledging them. Yes, her hands trembled slightly. Yes, her palms sweat, but her aim was born from pain. Her accuracy was carved from invisibility. These were not weaknesses. They were fuel. Bang. Another hit, slightly low but still within the inner ring. She heard the colonel grunt. His next shot landed with a louder crack, but the judge didn't smile. He only nodded again. Fifth shot.
Last of the round.
The wind shifted, a soft cross breeze. She adjusted a hair's breadth, trusting what Lane taught her. If the trees don't bend, but the grass flickers, trust the grass. She aimed. And just before she squeezed the trigger, a voice rang out from the crowd. She don't even belong here. Maya didn't turn. She fired. Bang! The bullet soared, and struck the exact center. The wooden post splintered behind the bullseye. Perfect shot.
No ripple. No mistake.
Gasps now. Real ones. Not even hidden. Someone dropped their coffee. Someone else muttered, she's sandbagging. Must be. The judge walked forward slowly, confirmed the hit, and without ceremony, raised his scorecard.
A perfect 5 for 5.
Maya stepped back from the line. She didn't smile. She didn't nod. She just breathed. One breath in, one breath out. And then eyes up, she locked on Whitman. He was already sweating. Not from heat, from the unraveling. From the fact that everything he thought about her was crumbling in front of a town that had come expecting a defeat, but now sat suspended in stunned silence. The colonel stepped forward. His shots were fast, louder, showier. He hit all 5, but 2 veered slightly off-center. One clipped the second ring. Technically impressive, but not flawless. And in a contest where he expected her to fold before even pulling the trigger, technical wasn't enough. Maya caught the glance he threw toward the judge. then toward the state inspector, who was now scribbling notes furiously. His mask was slipping. His legend, built on controlled showmanship, was being punctured by a girl who'd trained with paper targets and hand-me-down ammo. The announcer returned to the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes round 1 of the Southside Invitational Challenge. Both shooters have demonstrated exceptional skill. Due to the unprecedented tie in accuracy, Whitman raised his hand, interrupting. His voice, dry, but sharp, cut through the speakers. Given the circumstances, I propose we move into a bonus round. One not of precision but control. Murmurs erupted. The judge leaned in. Colonel, this wasn't agreed. I'm invoking Clause 12. Exhibition flexibility. The judge stiffened. He couldn't argue the clause. Few ever used it. It allowed for variation when standard rules didn't produce a clear winner. Maya narrowed her eyes. This wasn't just about winning now. He wanted to embarrass her. The new challenge. Moving targets. 3 discs, released by air pressure, launched in sequence, unpredictable angles, speed, focus, and adaptability. Not one mistake allowed. Whitman had trained on these since the Reagan administration. Maya? She'd only seen videos. She walked up to the line, lips pressed thin. Lane met her eyes from the crowd. He tapped his chest twice. A signal. Trust what you've practiced. Forget what you haven't. She nodded once. The first disc launched. Hard left. She pivoted, faster than the eye could follow. Bang. Dust cloud. Hit. The second came in hot, angled from the right, high and fast. She turned. Bang. Another hit. One left. Maya took a breath and saw something flicker behind the target launcher. A boy. White. Laughing. Holding something. A remote. Her mind screamed trap. But her body moved anyway. Third disc launched, unnaturally fast. Too fast. Sabotage. She fired. The bullet grazed the edge, just enough to clip it midair. The disc split in half. The crowd went silent again. The judge raised his hand. All 3 hits. Colonel Whitman stood frozen, eyes wide, and for the first time, without a smirk. Before the judge can declare Maya the winner of the bonus round, a voice erupts from the crowd. Challenge her again, with your weapon, Colonel. And Whitman turns, slowly, with a chilling smile. The air hung heavy, after the bonus round. The silence wasn't respectful, it was loaded. Maya could feel it pressing into her back like the butt of a rifle. She knew what it meant. She had won, clearly, unmistakably. And yet the eyes around her didn't carry admiration. Only resentment. Not one cheer, not one handshake. Just tightly clenched jaws and furrowed brows. The judge cleared his throat, lips parting to announce her victory. But the voice that shattered the stillness came from the far right edge of the crowd. Challenge her again, with your own damn weapon, Colonel. Heads turned. It was Lester Griggs, Whitman's oldest friend, and one of the club's most vocal traditionalists. He stood with a rolled-up Confederate flag umbrella in one hand, and a scowl on his face. The colonel didn't flinch. He turned slowly, letting the hush settle. Then that slow, cold smile returned. He raised a hand. Let's give the crowd what they came to see. The judge blinked. Colonel, this was not pre-authorized. I'm exercising Clause 18, personal demonstration rights. The crowd murmured. Lane stood in the front row, jaw tight, eyes locked on Maya. She took a step forward. What's Clause 18? She asked softly. Lane spoke without looking away from Whitman. He's allowed to create a final round if it's framed as a demonstration of skill, not competition. It's a legal trap. Maya looked at the judge. Will it count? The judge hesitated. Unofficially, but everyone here will remember it more than the rest. Exactly what Whitman wanted. To win the crowd back, even if the scoreboard said otherwise. The colonel called for the grounds crew. They moved fast, too fast. Like this had been rehearsed. 4 mechanical arms were wheeled out from the storage shed. Each held a sleek, silver disc launcher. But this time, the targets weren't foam or clay. They were transparent glass orbs, thinner than eggshells, smaller than teacups. Maya's stomach twisted. Custom fitted, the colonel explained to the crowd. For long-distance trajectory. He turned to Maya, 50-yard throw, 100-yard range, 30-degree sway. Speed set to random. If you're as good as they say, this shouldn't be a problem. There were murmurs from the other club shooters. No one had ever fired on these targets. Even Griggs, who started the challenge, looked uneasy now. Colonel, maybe. No, Whitman snapped. She asked to be here. Let her prove it. 3 other marksmen were offered a turn first. They declined. One shook his head and whispered, "No one's hit one of those clean." Then the colonel raised his hand. "I'll go first." He stepped onto the line, lifted his custom rifle, one with digital readouts, thermal enhancement, and a grip carved from white oak. He fired. The disc launched. Bang. Hit, but barely. A side graze. The glass cracked but didn't shatter fully. He lowered his rifle. Not bad for an old man. The crowd chuckled. Uneasy. Performative. Then he stepped aside, gesturing to Maya. "Your turn." Maya walked slowly to the line. Her rifle, stripped of enhancements. Her gloves, worn at the fingertips. She looked up at the sun. No clouds. Perfect visibility. Which meant no excuses, and no forgiveness. She stared at the small orb resting in the launcher arm. It looked like nothing, like a soap bubble made of glass. She inhaled through her nose, her chest rising with weight. The memory came fast. Her father, sitting with her on the porch, years ago. She must have been 11. A thunderstorm just ended, and the air still smelled of ozone. He was sick already. Thinner. But his voice was strong. "Baby," he'd said, "life ain't about how many times you shoot. It's about whether you can see what needs aiming when nobody else can." She hadn't understood it then. But now, standing in front of an audience that wanted her to miss, to break, to bleed pride, instead of precision, she knew exactly what he meant. This wasn't just a shot. This was clarity. "Shooter ready?" the judge asked. Maya didn't answer. She just raised her rifle. The disc launched. Fast. Unnatural arc. Swaying right. She didn't panic. Didn't blink. She stepped one's left foot forward. Tilted the barrel 2 degrees. She could hear her own heartbeat. She whispered beneath her breath, "For the ones who never made it to the line," and pulled the trigger. Bang! The disc exploded midair. 1,000 glass shards rained like diamonds into the gravel. Gasps. One man actually dropped his coffee mug. The silence was louder than applause. And then, from the left wing of the crowd, a scream. High. Piercing. Female. Maya turned instantly. A woman had collapsed near the front row, clutching her leg.
Glass. Blood.
One of the shards had shot sideways, striking her thigh. People scrambled. The medics pushed forward. The judge called for a pause. Colonel Whitman, unmoved, walked toward the chaos with calculated calm. He bent over the injured woman, his voice smooth. "I warned them," he said loud enough for all to hear, "that this would be dangerous." Then, turning slowly to the judge, "Should we continue risking the safety of our guests for her spectacle?" The implication was clear. One injury, accidental or not, and Maya would be labeled reckless, dangerous, a liability, and all her precision drowned in blame. She watched as the inspector whispered something into a notepad, watched as people now looked at her with suspicion, not awe. One cracked disc, one freak deflection, and now the truth was being rewritten in real time. Lane appeared at her side. "They're trying to spin it," he muttered. "Twist this into a safety issue. Paint you as volatile." She looked him dead in the eyes. "I'm not done." His jaw flexed. He nodded. "You've got one more disc." Maya stepped back to the line. The blood was still on the gravel. The crowd tense. The whispers thick. She closed her eyes for one moment and imagined her father again. "Don't shoot to prove you're allowed. Shoot because you're already there." She opened her eyes, raised the rifle, and waited for the final target. Just as the final target launches into the sky, a gunshot rings out. Not from Maya, but from somewhere behind the crowd. Chaos erupts, and the entire competition spirals into confusion before her final shot can be taken. Bang! The sound tore through the air. Sharp, unexpected, wrong. Not from Maya's rifle. Not from the official line. Somewhere behind the crowd, a second shot echoed across the range like a crack in the fabric of ceremony. For a split second, everyone froze. The judges, the shooters, the crowd, even the birds above the treetops seemed to scatter as if they too recognized something had gone off script. Then came the screams. Not from pain, this time, from fear. Maya didn't flinch. Her rifle was still up, her eye still on the final target arcing across the sky. But the noise, the panic, pulled her focus sideways. The glass disc shattered mid-flight. Not from her bullet, but from the chaos. And just like that, her last shot was stolen by confusion. Security rushed toward the back of the crowd. A scuffle unfolded near the fence line. Someone, A teenager in a camo cap was being restrained, shouting something incoherent about sending a message. Lane pushed his way to Maya's side, his voice low and steady. They planted him, meant to sabotage the finish. Maya lowered her rifle slowly, heart pounding, throat dry. I was ready. I know, but now they'll say I couldn't do it. They can say anything, Lane replied. But they saw, everyone saw. The judge called for order. It took nearly 10 minutes to settle the chaos. The shooter was escorted away, still yelling about upholding the honor of the range. He had no real weapon, just a homemade starter pistol. But the damage had been done. The energy shifted. What was once awe had become doubt, suspicion, confusion. The victory she'd earned had been blurred by spectacle. And just as Maya feared, the whispers began. She never took the last shot. Coincidence, isn't it? How convenient. Then came the voice that tried to tear it all down. You think we're stupid? It was Tyler McCree, another white shooter in his mid-20s, and the current club silver medalist, broad-shouldered, slick-smiled, and seething beneath the surface. He stepped forward, arms raised in mock innocence. She missed the last target. You all saw it. She didn't miss, the judge responded. Really? Then how come the disc broke before she fired? She never got the chance, Lane snapped. McCree grinned like a man who'd just tasted blood. So let her prove it. Right now. Clean round. No distractions. And we all stand down. Maya stepped forward, voice firm, unshaken. I'm not repeating the shot because of your sabotage. The crowd stirred. Some nodded. Others murmured. Uncomfortable. McCree laughed bitterly. Right. So you're afraid. Thought so. That word, afraid, slid across her skin like a blade. Maya's fingers twitched around the grip of her rifle. I'm not afraid, she said calmly. I'm exhausted. But she knew the damage had been done. Her silence would be twisted into cowardice. Her precision rewritten as performance. And Whitman knew it too. Colonel Whitman stepped forward. His face was unreadable. Except for the tension in his jaw, the twitch near his left eye. He looked out at the crowd like a man surveying a courtroom, weighing what version of history he could still control. He raised his revolver, old, heavy, polished like a crown, and then he threw it to the dirt. The metallic clatter silenced everything. People gasped. Even the judge took a step back. Whitman pointed at Maya. Enough of the theater, he said. You want to be equal? Then face me. The judge blinked. Colonel, the event is concluded. Then call this personal. One-on-one. No time. No rules. Just aim. Just truth. Lane stepped in front of Maya, his voice sharp. She doesn't owe you that. Whitman didn't blink. She owes everyone here an ending. Maya looked past him, into the crowd. Some faces were hungry for a show. Others were silent, not from respect, but fear of being on the wrong side of history. She realized this wasn't about the scorecard anymore. This was about the story that would be told tomorrow, and who got to tell it. Her shoulders lowered. Her voice cut through the tension like glass. I accept. Lane didn't protest. He simply turned to her, eyes burning with emotion. Make it undeniable. Colonel Whitman stepped onto the line. No official timer. No judge. Just the two of them, separated by 30 yards of gravel and a century of expectation. The revolver rested in his holster. Maya's rifle hung by her side. The judge, hesitant but cornered, raised a hand. This is off the record. No, Maya said. This is the record. And just as both raised their weapons, a low rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. The sky, once clear, was now smeared with clouds. The air thickened, and for the first time the colonel looked uncertain. His finger hovered above the trigger. Maya's eyes didn't leave the target. She whispered, "Let the shot decide." Just as the judge raises his hand to signal the final round, a voice crackles through a nearby walkie-talkie. Stand down. State order incoming. And the entire crowd turns to see a black SUV approaching, its license plate marked with federal insignia. The tires of the black SUV crunched slowly over the gravel, commanding a silence deeper than any shot could have caused. Its government plates reflected sunlight like a mirror turned toward the past. People whispered, frantic, hushed. Authority had arrived, and it was watching. Colonel Whitman squinted at the vehicle, but did not move. His posture remained rigid, pride locked into every vertebrae. He nodded to the judge and signaled, "Proceed." Maya looked once toward Lane, who gave the smallest nod of affirmation. The message was clear. Even under surveillance, Truth still had to be fought for. The judge stepped forward, holding a hand between the two shooters. This is a non-sanctioned match. Final shot. Target 150 yards. Clean hit wins. No mulligan. The colonel spat into the gravel. Let's end this show. A fresh paper target was pinned to the far fence. White center, black rings, fluttering slightly in the growing wind. Identical targets for both shooters, set side by side, equidistant, unprotected. The judge looked between them. My signal. Maya could feel it, her sweat cooling against her ribs, her pulse drumming against the inside of her throat. She adjusted her stance, anchoring herself with her back foot, fingers wrapped tight around her rifle. Her gloves were damp, the fabric sticking to her palm, but her grip was steady. To her right, Colonel Whitman's revolver rested in his palm, like it was born there. His hands were veined, aged, but still confident. He rolled his neck once and stared down the range like a man returning to his kingdom. But Maya could see it, the tightness behind his eyes, the stiffness in his right hand, the subtle shift in his breathing, faster than before. He wasn't just battling her now. He was battling the realization that he could lose. Her mind spun, but not from panic, from perspective. This moment wasn't about rifles or revolvers, not about trophies or press. It was about the story they'd tried to write long before she was born. A story where people like her were always the footnote, never the headline. And now that story stood in the dirt next to her. Cocky, tired, decorated, cracking. She whispered to herself, just loud enough for the wind to carry it back to her ears. I am the shot they were never ready for. The judge raised his hand. Shooters ready. The crowd leaned forward. Fire. The colonel moved first. His arm snapped into position like a relic from the battlefield. Fast, practiced, mechanical. He pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! The shot echoed across the range. Dust kicked up from the base of his target, not the center. Low, right, a near miss. Maya didn't move. She stood still, letting the echo of his shot dissolve into the morning. She closed her eyes. Her father's voice came, clear as day. Don't race the world. Make the world wait for you. She opened her eye, breathed, and pulled the trigger. Bang! Her bullet sliced through the air like resolve forged in heat. The paper target jerked, then stilled.
Dead center.
Direct hit, clean. For a moment, no one moved. No one clapped. No one exhaled. Then the judge stepped forward, lifted the red flag above Maya's line, and spoke into the mic. Target hit. Miss Johnson. But his voice was cut off. Colonel Whitman had dropped his revolver. It clattered to the ground, louder than the shots that came before it. His face lost all color. He staggered backward one step, then another, and without warning, collapsed. The crowd gasped. His body hit the gravel with a dull thud. Dust lifted around him like breath escaping. Paramedics rushed forward. People pushed, shouted. Lane grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her back instinctively. Stay clear, he whispered. But Maya didn't step back. She stood still, rifle at her side, eyes locked on the man who just seconds ago tried to erase her worth with a final shot. Now he lay unconscious, surrounded by men in white gloves and concerned eyes. For the first time, he wasn't in control. The SUV doors swung open. Two figures stepped out, one in a black suit, the other in a crisp gray dress with a Department of Justice badge clipped to her blazer. They cut through the crowd, like heat, through silence. The woman stopped directly in front of Maya. You're Maya Johnson? She asked, breath even, tone unreadable. Maya nodded. The agent didn't smile, but her next words landed like lightning. We need to talk. It's urgent. Maya blinked. Now? The agent nodded. Now. This isn't just about a match anymore. As Maya turns to follow the federal agent away from the stunned crowd, a cell phone rings inside the SUV, and when the agent answers, her face drops. She whispers, tell her, it's not just the colonel. There's been a breach at the state level. She's at the center of something bigger than this. Colonel Whitman didn't die, but the myth of him did. The paramedics lifted his limp body from the gravel and wheeled it toward the back of the club's first aid building. His face drained, his pulse thin, his hands twitching faintly as they checked for a response. Some said it was heat stroke. Others whispered blood pressure, or even a stress seizure. But no one said what they all suspected. That the colonel didn't collapse because his body gave out. He collapsed because everything else did. His name, his command, his legend, and Maya was the one who shattered it. without raising her voice. By the time Maya was escorted into the private conference room of the Southside Clubhouse by the federal agents, the crowd had scattered into clumps of confusion. Some lingered at the fence line, unsure if they had witnessed a competition or the beginning of something else entirely. Inside, the air conditioning buzzed softly. The woman with the DOJ badge sat across from her, her notepad unopened. This wasn't supposed to happen today. The agent began. But we've been watching this club for a long time. Maya frowned. Watching for what?
Voter intimidation. Employment bias. Discriminatory membership policies masked by tradition.
Maya blinked. You're telling me this wasn't just about me? The agent's face didn't change. You forced their hand, Maya. That made people talk. A few days ago, a staff member gave us records, applications that were automatically denied based on race, even when the applicant met every qualification. One of them was your father's.
Maya froze.
My father applied here 3 times, using initials. They never even opened the envelope. Her breath caught. It was a punch to the chest she didn't see coming. All this time she'd thought she was carrying his unfinished dream forward. She didn't know she'd also been carrying the exact injustice that buried it in the first place. The agent leaned forward. You exposed something bigger than yourself. You didn't just shoot a target. You pierced a lie. Maya didn't know how to respond. She didn't feel powerful. She felt cracked open. What began as personal had turned historic. And somewhere between the crowd's silence and the colonel's collapse, she'd lost the ability to tell which part of her should feel proud and which part should mourn. Outside the room, the scene was unraveling in new directions. Club officials argued behind closed doors. One board member was overheard muttering, "She's going to destroy this place." Another replied, "We destroyed it the moment we let tradition mean exclusion." Racial tension swirled like pollen, visible, irritating, dangerous. Some of the shooters quietly left the premises, heads down, not speaking. Others, mainly younger members, stood near the parking lot, defiant. She made the shot. That girl earned it, but they'll never give her her due. Doesn't matter anymore. We saw it. Lane found Maya after the agents stepped out to make their next call. He handed her a water bottle, and for the first time his eyes looked soft, not proud, not victorious, just human. You all right? He asked. I don't know, she replied.
Feels like you won something you never meant to compete for?
Maya nodded slowly. I wanted a seat at the table, she said. Now I've broken it in half. Lane chuckled, but there was no joy in it. Well, maybe it needed breaking. Later that evening, the news vans arrived. Local media first, small cameras, tired reporters. But by nightfall, 2 national outlets had picked up the story. Footage of the duel spread online. Twitter threads bloomed. Hashtags formed. Maya takes the shot. Trended by midnight. But Maya was nowhere near a screen. She was back at home, sitting on the porch, watching the moths circle the porch light like they were chasing some invisible warmth. Her mother came out, sat beside her, their hands brushing. They didn't speak. The silence wasn't empty. It was shared. Inside, Maya's phone buzzed nonstop. Messages, voicemails, emails, some from reporters, some from strangers. Some just said thank you. Others weren't as kind. At 11:42 p.m., a knock came at the door. Not hard, not rushed. Maya opened it slowly. It was Elijah Bates, civil rights attorney, national figure, calm as stone, sharp as lightning. He looked out of place on her porch, but not uncomfortable. I wasn't sure you'd be up, he said. I wasn't sure I'd be asleep, she replied. He nodded. I watched the footage. Twice. You didn't just win. You rewrote something. Maya leaned on the doorframe. And I think you need to decide what comes next, before someone else decides it for you. She tilted her head. What do you mean? I want to represent you, Elijah said. But not in court, in legacy. She stared at him, unsure. He continued, voice calm but full of charge. Press conferences. Speaking engagements. Interviews. This isn't about a shooting match anymore, Maya. It's about what your presence, your poise, your refusal to break did to people who've been unchallenged for decades. Maya hesitated. I'm not ready for all that. He didn't smile, but his voice grew gentler. No one ever is, but you already stood taller than most people ever will. From inside the house, her mother called softly. Everything all right? Maya turned slightly. Yeah. Just someone offering me a second shot. Elijah extended a card. She took it. Their fingers brushed brief, electric. And then he stepped back into the darkness, the crunch of gravel fading into the night. Maya closed the door, stood in the hallway, looked at the business card, then at the rifle still resting on the kitchen table. One had earned her a voice. The other might help her use it. As Maya stands alone, deciding whether to become more than a shooter, her phone buzzes again. This time it's a voicemail from a national news network. The producer's voice says, "We've uncovered something on the Colonel. You need to hear this before morning." The voicemail played like a whisper from another world. "This is Deidre Fields from NNC Investigates. We've uncovered new documents involving Colonel Whitman, classified service records, and club policies. We'd like to speak with Maya Johnson immediately. This isn't just a win. It's a scandal, and she's at the center of it." Maya sat on the edge of her bed, phone still in hand, the room dim except for the faint light bleeding in from the hallway. The rifle, still resting against the corner wall, felt distant now, like a piece of the past that refused to let her fully step into the present. The door creaked. Her mother appeared, bathrobe tight, worry in her eyes. "You still up?" she asked. Maya nodded. "Couldn't sleep." Her mother looked at the phone. "More press?" "Yeah. They say there's more to Whitman than people know." Her mother hesitated. "And you? You gonna be the one to tell it?" Maya didn't answer. The next morning brought Elijah Bates back, this time in a dark gray suit and a voice full of purpose. He met Maya at the community center, where Lane had arranged a private room. Papers were already spread across the table. A small recording device sat in the center like a loaded weapon. "I got your message," Maya said, stepping in cautiously. Elijah gestured toward a chair. "You might want to sit for this." He pressed play. A recording clicked alive. The voice was unmistakably Colonel Whitman's, older, slower, laced with arrogance. "I'm not worried about her. You let one of them win one round, they start thinking they've earned a seat at the table. I built this place to keep them out, not hand it over." Then another voice chimed in. "Griggs. And if she talks, then we bury her with rules. With policy. With fear. We don't need blood. Just silence." Maya's mouth went dry. Elijah hit pause. "The audio's been verified. It was recorded by a former staffer 2 weeks ago. She's willing to testify if it goes public." Maya stared at the table. The ache in her chest grew sharper. "So it was never about the match?" "No," Elijah said quietly. "It was about making sure your win didn't mean anything." He leaned forward, resting his hands gently on the table. "You're standing at a fork, Maya. One way keeps you quiet. Local, small. You disappear from headlines in a week. Go back to school. Live a life that looks a little safer. And the other." He met her gaze fully now. "You go public. Press conference. National exposure. We file a formal civil rights complaint against the club. Maybe even the state sports board. You become a face, not just a name. And that comes with consequences." She didn't flinch. "What kind?" "Death threats. Surveillance. Harassment. The press will dig into your life, your family, your father's history. It won't be fair, but it might be necessary." Maya looked at Lane, who had stood quietly in the corner. He gave her nothing but steady silence, his version of letting her decide without pressure. Then she looked at her mother, who had come in halfway through and now leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. "I don't want you getting hurt," her mother said softly. "I already was," Maya replied, just in quieter ways. That night they sat around the kitchen table. No dinner, just space. Elias, her younger brother, fidgeted with a pencil, eyes darting between them. Marcus leaned against the fridge, arms crossed, watching Maya like he was memorizing her face.
"You really gonna do it?" he asked.
"Step into the fire like that?" Maya nodded slowly. "I think the fire's been here the whole time. I just didn't see it until I struck a match." The threats came faster than expected. Anonymous texts, calls from blocked numbers. One message scrawled in black paint across the back fence. "We don't miss twice." Elijah had security arranged within 24 hours. "We've got eyes on your property now," he said. "Don't open the door for anyone you don't know. Don't travel alone." Her mother's hands trembled as she double-locked every window. Elias slept with the light on. And still, the pressure rose. News crews circled. Bloggers published think pieces. Old footage surfaced of Maya in middle school, speaking at a school board meeting, about textbooks that erased slavery. The narrative began to tilt. Some called her a plant, a radical, a tool. Others called her brave.
Both felt heavy.
On the third day, Elijah handed her a note with an address and a time. Church downtown. Press conference. 7 p.m. Live streamed. National. Maya folded the paper, placed it in her back pocket, and said nothing. That afternoon, she sat alone in the barn. The smell of dust and old wood grounded her. She placed the .22 rifle gently on the workbench, her fingers tracing the grooves, her breath steady. She thought of her father, of his hand, his voice, his absence. When the sun dipped behind the trees, Maya stepped outside and dressed in silence. No armor, no makeup, just a clean white shirt, a single silver necklace, her father's dog tag, and a look in her eyes that said, "I'm done asking." They arrived 10 minutes early. The church was full, reporters, allies, doubters. Lane was already seated. Elijah waited by the steps. "You still have time to back out," he offered one last time. Maya shook her head. "I didn't come this far to watch from the pews." She stepped through the side door and into the glow of the sanctuary lights. A hush fell.
Then flashes.
Then microphones pushed forward like hands grasping for meaning. She stepped up to the podium, heart racing, and just as the first question was asked, a figure entered the side aisle, gray blazer, cane in hand. Colonel Whitman, alive, and walking slowly toward the front. Before Maya can speak, the colonel raises a hand and says, "Before she says anything, I need to confess something that might change how you see all of this." Maya didn't breathe when she saw him. Colonel Whitman, upright, cane tapping lightly against the floor, suit pressed, metals glinting under the church lights, entered through the side aisle as if he'd never collapsed, never lost, never been unmasked. Gasps rippled through the audience like wind through dry leaves. Reporters turned. Cameras shifted. Elijah froze behind her. But Maya didn't move from the podium. The colonel raised his hand, palm open like an oath. "Before she says anything," he said, voice low but clear, "I need to confess something that might change how you see all of this." Whispers erupted. The judge from the match stood in the back pew, arms folded. Lane leaned forward, ready to interrupt. But Maya spoke first. "You'll have your moment," she said calmly, her voice steadier than she felt. "But tonight, I earned the microphone." Whitman hesitated. Then, surprisingly, he nodded and took a seat on the second row, directly in front of her, eyes unblinking. Maya looked out at the audience. The lights were warm and direct, but she could still make out every expression, some skeptical, some hopeful, some hard with judgment. She took a breath, then began. "I wasn't supposed to be here." She let the words settle. "I wasn't supposed to be standing on this stage, not because I'm not qualified, but because qualification, where I come from, doesn't get you an invitation. It gets you silence." Heads tilted. Some nodded. "I trained in secret. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Because in places like this, black girls with dreams get called troublemakers before they ever get called talented." A low murmur passed through the pews.
But I didn't come here to talk about me. I came here to talk about the system that made someone like me a threat before I even picked up a rifle.
Colonel Whitman shifted in his seat, jaw tight. Maya didn't flinch. "There are people in this room," she continued, "who told themselves I was too loud, too bold, too arrogant to deserve a place on the range. They built fences out of rules, then painted those fences with tradition. But no matter how pretty you dress up exclusion, it's still injustice underneath." A few audience members clapped softly. Others stiffened. "I didn't shoot to make headlines. I shot because I was tired of watching talent rot behind gate-kept doors. My father applied to that club 3 times. He was a veteran, a hero, but his skin said no, even when his resume said yes." Gasps. Audible now. A woman in the back wiped her eye. Maya paused, eyes landing on Whitman. "I faced a man who'd made a career of keeping people like me small, and when he saw I wouldn't shrink, he cracked, not just in body, but in legacy. That's what truth does when it's finally louder than lies." The colonel stared back at her, face pale but unreadable. Maya's voice softened. "This isn't just about shooting, or clubs, or even trophies. It's about the fear of what happens when people who were never meant to succeed start doing it anyway." She leaned forward. "And let me be clear, I'm not asking for a seat at the table anymore. I'm building my own, and everyone who believes in justice, real justice, is welcome to sit with me." Silence held the room like glass about to crack. Then scattered applause. Then a wave. Louder. Then louder still, but not unanimous. A man near the front shook his head, arms crossed, lips curled in disdain. A woman whispered to her friend, "She just made this all about race." And yet the noise could no longer be ignored. Maya stepped back, her hands calm, her breath full. The spotlight didn't burn anymore. It illuminated. As she turned to leave the podium, stepping down into the narrow space between the front row and the stage, a hand reached out and gripped her shoulder. Firm, unexpected. She turned. Colonel Whitman stood behind her, closer than she realized. His eyes were glassy, not from tears, but from something else. Something like reckoning. "I need a moment," he said. Maya stared at him and waited. "I watched you shoot," he said softly. "I've watched a lot of people shoot. Men in war, boys on base, Olympians. But I've never seen what I saw in your eyes that day." "What was that?" Maya asked, guarded. He paused. "Clarity." Then his voice hardened again. "And it scared the hell out of me." She could hear cameras clicking nearby. People watching. But for a brief second, it felt like the church had emptied. Just the two of them. Opponent and opponent. Truth and fear. "Why now?" she asked. "Because people will listen to me," he replied. "Even when they shouldn't. And maybe it's time I use that for something other than preservation. A beat. Would you consider letting me endorse you?" The words fell like bricks. Maya's mouth parted, stunned. "You want to stand beside me after everything you did?" He didn't nod, didn't smile. Just looked tired. "I don't deserve your grace," he said. "But they need to hear me say what they won't believe coming from you alone." Before Maya can answer, a reporter shouts from the back of the sanctuary, "Maya, how do you respond to the leaked files about the colonel's role in the voter suppression case? Did you know?" And the room explodes into chaos. The chaos came quick. Dozens of voices rising over each other, cameras flashing like lightning, reporters lunging with outstretched microphones. The question echoed louder than the rest. "Did you know Colonel Whitman suppressed black voter registrations during his tenure as county registrar?" Maya turned sharply. Her gaze landed not on the reporter but on Whitman. He didn't look shocked. He looked tired, like he'd been waiting for this moment to arrive all his life. Elijah Bates stepped between Maya and the crowd, his voice calm but commanding. "We're not commenting right now. Please step back. This is still a house of worship." The sanctuary's security began clearing out the press, ushering people toward the side exits. Some cursed under their breath. Some snapped final photos. Whitman didn't flinch. He touched Maya's arm lightly. "Can we speak alone?" She studied him, saw the slight tremble in his jaw, the weight in his eyes. He wasn't hiding anymore. "Follow me," she said. They stepped into a quiet hallway at the back of the church. Walls lined with faded paintings of past pastors, old baptisms, and handwritten Bible verses. Maya led him into a small office meant for counseling. A dusty cross hung over the door. She shut it gently behind them. No cameras, no audience, just truth. Whitman sat slowly, his cane resting across his lap like a burden. Maya remained standing. He looked up at her with a fragile steadiness, the arrogance from before drained from his bones. "There was a time," he began, "when I believed silence made me neutral, that if I didn't join the fight for or against change, I was safe, fair." Maya didn't speak. "I thought tradition protected me, protected us. What I didn't see, what I refused to see was that tradition had its hand on someone else's neck." He cleared his throat, the sound gravelly, exposed. "My father was like me. Maybe worse. He built fences around this county with policy and charm, told people he was preserving values. But those values were chains just dressed in civility." Maya raised her chin slightly. "And you continued his legacy." Whitman's eyes met hers. "I did." The silence between them stretched. "I told myself I was protecting excellence," he continued. "That standards mattered more than feelings. But it wasn't excellence I was guarding. It was comfort. My comfort. My place." He looked down at his hands. "Seeing you shoot, it broke something in me. Not because you beat me, but because you made it look effortless. Like you'd been carrying the weight we pretended didn't exist, and still outpaced us." Maya finally sat, her posture composed but watchful. "You could have said this earlier. I wasn't ready to mean it," he said. She studied him. His tone. The small shakes. The honesty that was slow but real. "Why now?" "Because when I collapsed on that range, I realized something." He paused. "People weren't rushing to help me. They were watching to see if the man who built the wall could survive the bricks he stacked himself. He sighed. And maybe I don't want to die as just the villain in your story. For the first time, Maya allowed herself to soften.
Not with forgiveness.
But curiosity. Do you regret it? All of it? He nodded slowly. I regret being afraid of what you represented. I regret thinking I had to guard power like it was scarce. Another beat. I regret your father never got his shot. That struck her, deeper than she expected. You knew about his applications, she said, more statement than question. Whitman swallowed hard. I didn't just know. I denied the last one myself. We were scared. You don't unwrite the world by letting a man like him into the club. You rewrite it. And we weren't ready for that chapter. Maya leaned forward, voice low. You were ready to erase me. Even after you saw what I could do. He nodded. I know.
Then what do you want now?
To use what's left of my name to open a door. I can't fix what I broke, but I can clear the path you're walking, if you'll let me. She looked at him for a long time. Saw a man not asking for absolution, but relevance. Not redemption, but a last use for his influence. I don't need your permission, she said. I know, he replied. But others still listen when I speak. And if I say you belong, it's not because you needed it. It's because they need to hear it. He stood, slowly, painfully, picked up his cane. I'll make a public statement. Name, names, detail what we did. Then I'll step away, from the club, from the board, from the county council. He paused by the door. I won't ask you to trust me. But I do hope, one day, you'll believe I tried to change before it was too late. She didn't respond, didn't need to. The silence said enough. He opened the door, took a single step into the hallway, and froze. A storm of shouting voices roared from the front of the church. Heavy feet. Panic. Lane appeared, face pale, sweat lining his brow.
Elijah says you need to leave now.
What happened? Maya asked, standing. Lane didn't sugarcoat it. Word spread. Whitman's confession went public, and it brought out the other side. What side? The ones that want the past back. Armed. Angry. They're outside. Maya didn't flinch, but her throat tightened. How many? Enough that the sheriffs asked for backup. Whitman stepped beside her, his face drained. I'll go talk to them. No, Lane barked. You'll get torn apart. Maya looked toward the window. Red lights flashed outside. She turned back to Lane. Then we don't run. Elijah appeared at the other end of the hall, flanked by church staff. We'll get you out the back, he said, voice taut. But we need to move. They're shouting your name now, Maya, and not kindly. As Maya reaches for her bag, her phone buzzes again. A single text from an unknown number. They're not here for him. They're here for you. Don't go outside. The phone buzzed again in Maya's palm.
One message.
No name. They're not here for him. They're here for you. Don't go outside. Her fingers tightened around the screen. The fluorescent hallway flickered once, dimming as if the building itself held its breath. Elijah took one look at the message and stepped between her and the back door. We move now. Quiet fast. Whitman stepped forward too, but the agent held up a hand. They'll let you go, she said, voice low. You're a symbol of their past, but she's the symbol of everything they fear. He looked down, swallowed. Then let me speak to them. Elijah shook his head. This isn't your crowd anymore. Maya could hear the yelling from outside now. Louder. Closer. Words she couldn't quite make out, but she recognized the rhythm. Anger doesn't need clarity to be loud. Lane appeared again, pushing open a narrow service exit, revealing a dim hallway leading to the rear lot. Cars running. 2 blocks away. I'm driving. Maya hesitated. She looked back at the church. This place where she'd raised her voice and shook a system, where truth had cracked the floor beneath decades of silence. Then she looked at Whitman. Pale. Fragile. Yet still holding her gaze with something unspoken. Respect, maybe. Or guilt dressed in humility. Come with us, she said to him, surprising even herself. He blinked. After everything? You said you wanted to use what's left of your name. Then use it. Not in statements. Not behind doors. Use it in the open. He nodded, cane trembling. Together, they stepped through the exit. The hallway outside the sanctuary was cold, concrete-lined, stripped of the ceremony and reverence that had lit the stage moments before. But the moment wasn't over. Because as they reached the car, as Lane unlocked the door, a sudden shriek from the main street made everyone freeze. Tires screeched. Then a chorus of voices erupted. Ugly, loud, familiar. Traitor, Judas, she's ruining this country. Someone threw a bottle. It shattered near Maya's feet, glass skittering across the pavement, like sharp applause. Lane pulled her into the car first. Whitman followed, ducking low. Elijah slammed the door shut just as a second object, a rock, bounced off the hood. They sped off without headlights, windows down just enough to hear the hate echo behind them. And still Maya did not cry. By the time they reached the safe house 2 towns over, Maya sat curled on the couch, still in her white shirt, still wearing her father's dog tag. Elijah paced the kitchen. Lane watched the news from a laptop. Whitman slept in a guest room, the weight of confession dragging him into restless dreams. And Maya just sat, processing. Over the next week, the world responded. Some praised her courage. Others called her a puppet. White nationalist forums posted her address only to have it wiped by anonymous defenders hours later. Letters flooded her home, some threatening, some heartbreaking. One, from a girl in South Carolina, read, "I watched you stand there, unshaken. I'm learning how to shoot now. My daddy says you woke something up in me." Maya pinned it above her bed. Elijah returned 2 days later, with a proposal. Speaking tour. Public forums. Universities. News outlets. We go county by county. Tell your story. The right way. You'd have protection. You'd have a platform. And it could change more than this town. Maya nodded slowly. But something still clung to her ribs. What if I don't want to be a symbol? Elijah paused. Then don't be. Be a voice. Be the next chapter. Let the others decide what it meant later. That night her mother sat beside her on the porch again. Same old creaking swing. Same stars. Same small town that was suddenly the center of something massive. "I saw your father in you," she said quietly. Maya blinked. "When?" "When you didn't shoot back at hate." She reached into her robe pocket, pulled out an old photo. Maya's father, young, holding a BB rifle beside a protest sign that read, "Accuracy isn't just for guns. Aim for justice." Maya held it, her fingers trembling. "I didn't know he marched," she whispered. "He didn't tell many people," her mother said. "Didn't think anyone would believe him capable, or worthy." Maya's throat thickened. "Maybe this isn't just my legacy." Her mother smiled softly. "No, baby. But it is yours to carry now." 2 weeks later, Maya stood at the state capitol. Press banners, protesters and supporters divided by barricades. Elijah introduced her. Lane stood in the front row. Her family watched from a secured gallery. Whitman, in a black overcoat, sat silently in the back, head bowed. She walked up to the podium, lifted the microphone, and spoke. 2 months ago, I asked for a shot." She paused. "Not a favor, not a gift. A chance. To prove that discipline and dreams and dignity didn't come with skin conditions or zip codes." The crowd stirred, and what I got in return was fire. Sabotage. Threats. But also support. Truth. And a shot that echoed farther than I ever imagined. She looked up at the Capitol dome. "My father died without a platform. But today, I raise mine. Not just to shoot, but to speak. For every child who practiced in the dark, dreaming of a chance in the light." The applause didn't come all at once. But when it did, it felt like thunder cracking through decades of silence. Maya stepped down, her eyes wet but unblinking. Later that evening, alone, she returned to the barn. Same walls, same smell, same ghost of her younger self hanging in the dust. She lit a small lantern, propped up a new target, and picked up her rifle. But not to prove anything, not to win. Just to feel the rhythm of breath and purpose again. She fired once, a clean hit, then looked up. And through the crack in the barn door, she saw headlights on the road. Not one car, but several, moving slow, too slow. Hooded silhouettes stood in the distance, watching, waiting. But Maya didn't flinch. She stood tall, rifle by her side, eyes steady. And this time she wasn't alone. From behind her, footsteps. Lane, Elijah, her mother, dozens of neighbors. Black, white, young, old. Each holding a light, a sign, a camera, or just present. The crowd outside didn't move forward, but neither did Maya, because legacies aren't carried by fear. They're carved by those who stand still and stand tall. If Maya's story shook something in you, don't let it settle. Challenge what's been called tradition. Question who's been told to stay quiet. Speak up in rooms where silence has always won. Because real change doesn't start with permission. It starts when